The presidential guard stood firm at the grand gates of Aso Villa in Abuja, blocking two elegantly dressed people who knelt on the hot concrete, tears streaming down their faces. The woman's expensive gold necklace glinted in the afternoon sun as she sobbed loudly, begging to see the president's son. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and how did this story touch you? Now let's dive into the story. Just weeks ago, this same woman had stood in her luxurious mansion in Lagos, laughing cruelly as a young mechanic sweated in her garden, forced to cut grass and carry heavy pots like a common servant. She had mocked him, humiliated him, and thrown his marriage proposal back in his face. Now she was on her knees, desperate for his forgiveness. But how did a poor mechanic become the son of Nigeria's president? And what terrible mistake had this wealthy family made that brought them to this moment of shame? 3 months earlier, the story began on a completely different note. Blessing Bankole woke up in her beautifully decorated bedroom in the heart of Victoria Island, Lagos. She stretched lazily on her silk sheets and smiled at her reflection in the large mirror. At 23 years old, Blessing was stunning, and she knew it. Her father owned hotels across Nigeria, from Port Harcourt to Kano. Her mother was a fashionable woman who wore only the finest lace and gold. Blessing had never known hunger, never worn torn shoes, never experienced the bitter taste of poverty. Life was glamorous parties, expensive clothes, and admiration from everyone who knew the Bankole family name. But Blessing had a secret. For 4 months, she had been seeing a man her family knew nothing about. His name was David, and he was a mechanic who worked in a small workshop near the University of Lagos. David was young and strong, with gentle hands that were always stained with engine oil. His clothes were never perfectly clean after a long day of repairing cars, but his heart was honest and his intentions were pure. They had met when Blessing's car broke down one morning on her way to meet friends. She had been furious, tapping her expensive shoes impatiently on the roadside. David had walked over calmly, offering to help. At first, Blessing looked at him with disgust. His work clothes were dirty and sweat covered his forehead. But as he worked on her car with skilled precision, speaking politely and carrying himself with quiet confidence, she noticed something different about him. He was not like other mechanics she had encountered. What started as occasional car repairs slowly became something more. David would fix her vehicle whenever it had problems, and Blessing would bring him drinks and snacks as thanks. Those small gestures turned into long conversations. The conversations grew into laughter and shared moments. Before Blessing realized what was happening, she found herself looking forward to seeing David. Against everything she believed about social class and status, she fell in love with him. But this love was not something she felt proud of. She never breathed a word about David to her parents. To her family, a mechanic was beneath them, unworthy of even being mentioned at their dinner table. To her wealthy friends, he was just another struggling man trying to survive in Lagos. Only one person knew about the relationship. Her name was Grace, Blessing's closest friend since childhood. Grace was different from Blessing in almost every way. While Blessing loved designer bags and luxury cars, Grace valued character and honesty. She was kind, humble, and always spoke the truth even when it hurt to hear it. Grace never judged David for his poverty. Instead, she respected how hard he worked and how genuinely he cared for Blessing. One afternoon, as they sat in a cafe in Lekki, Grace said something that would later prove prophetic. Blessing, don't look down on David. A man's today doesn't decide his tomorrow. One single day can change a person's entire life forever. Blessing had waved her hand dismissively and laughed. Grace, you don't understand my world. My parents will never allow me to marry a mechanic. I can't throw away my future for love that won't put food on the table. Yet despite her words, Blessing continued seeing David secretly. Their hidden relationship went on for 4 months. Then one quiet evening, everything changed. David had asked Blessing to meet him at a small park in Ikeja, far from her neighborhood where nobody would recognize her. When David arrived, there was something different in his eyes, something serious and determined. He held her hands gently and looked directly into her eyes. Blessing, he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. I know we come from different worlds. I know your parents may never see me as worthy of you. But I also know that I love you with everything in me. I want to spend my life with you. I may not have riches today, but I have dreams and I'm working hard every day to build a future. Will you marry me? Blessing's eyes widened in complete shock. Her heart raced, but not with joy. Instead, she felt embarrassment and wounded pride. After only 4 months of dating, this mechanic was proposing marriage. Blessing pulled her hands away from David's grip, her face twisted with disbelief. You want to marry me? She asked slowly, her voice cold. Do you even know who I am? Do you understand what my parents expect? David nodded firmly, hope still shining in his eyes. Yes, I want to build a home with you. I may not have much now, but I promise to take care of you. I will never let you regret saying yes to me. Blessing laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the evening air like a knife. David, you must be dreaming. My parents will never allow this. How can I face my family and tell them I'm marrying a mechanic? You don't even own your workshop. You still work under another man. And now, after just 4 months, you think you can propose to me? David's face fell, pain filling his eyes. So that's all you see when you look at me? Just a poor mechanic? Blessing snapped back without hesitation. What else should I see? You're not in my class, David. I enjoyed our time together, but marriage? Never. My parents will never allow it, and I won't fight them over you. David stood there silently for a long moment, processing the cruel rejection. Then he nodded slowly, his voice quiet but firm. I understand. If that's how you feel, I won't force you. But remember this, Blessing. Love is not about wealth, and tomorrow is never certain. The man you despise today may be the man everyone respects tomorrow. He turned and walked away into the darkness, leaving Blessing standing alone. Later that night, Grace came to visit. Blessing, still angry and defensive, told her everything. He actually proposed to me, Grace. Can you imagine? After 4 months and in his dirty work clothes. How can a man with nothing ask me to marry him? Grace shook her head sadly. Blessing, you shouldn't mock him. He loves you. Don't you see it? What if tomorrow he becomes a great man? What will you do then? Blessing scoffed. Great man? Grace, please don't start preaching. My parents want the best for me. They'll never agree and I won't go against them. David should know his place. Grace sighed deeply, her eyes filled with worry. I fear you may regret your words one day. Blessing frowned. Regret? Never. I know exactly what I'm doing. But deep inside, Blessing felt something she refused to admit. A small voice whispered that perhaps she was making a terrible mistake. Her pride, however, was too strong to let her see the truth. That same night, David sat alone in his tiny room in Yaba, staring at the simple ring he had saved money for months to buy. Tears welled in his eyes, but he held them back. He had given Blessing his heart, and she had crushed it without mercy. The next morning, David made a decision. If Blessing would not listen to him, perhaps she would listen to Grace. Grace was the only person in Blessing's circle who ever spoke to him with respect and genuine kindness. So later that day, David left his workshop and went to the small cafe where Grace often studied after her classes. When Grace saw David approach, she smiled warmly, but quickly noticed the trouble on his face. What's wrong? She asked gently. David sighed, his hands trembling as he spoke. Grace, I don't know who else to talk to. Yesterday I asked Blessing to marry me. I know it may seem fast, but my heart is sure. I love her. I want to spend my life with her. I may not have riches now, but I'm working hard. I believe love is not about money, but about standing together through life. His voice cracked with emotion. But she laughed at me. She said I'm not in her class. She said her parents will never accept me. Grace's heart sank. She had feared this would happen. David, you must understand Blessing's upbringing. She has lived in wealth all her life. Her parents raised her to believe that money is everything. To her, marrying someone without money feels like falling from grace. David's voice lowered to a desperate whisper. That's why I came to you. Please, Grace, I beg you. Talk to her. She listens to you more than anyone else. Tell her not to despise me. Tell her that one day can change a man's life. Tell her love is worth more than wealth. Please help me. Grace looked into his sincere eyes and saw real pain and genuine love. She nodded slowly. I will talk to her. But David, you must prepare yourself. Blessing is very stubborn. If she has made up her mind, it may not be easy to change it. Still, I will try. David's eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Grace. Even if she rejects me forever, I will never forget your kindness. That evening, Grace went to the Bankole mansion. She found Blessing in her room, painting her nails and humming to music. Blessing, we need to talk about David, Grace said firmly. Blessing rolled her eyes dramatically. Not again, Grace. Must you always bring him up? Grace's voice rose with emotion. Yes, because he came to me today. He begged me to talk to you. Blessing, do you realize what you did to him? You laughed at his proposal. You threw his love back in his face. Blessing waved her hand dismissively. So what? You should know his place. A mechanic proposing to me after 4 months? That's madness. Grace shook her head. It's not madness. It's love. David loves you with his whole heart. He may not have wealth, but he has something richer than gold. He has sincerity, and you rejected him because of pride. Blessing crossed her arms and smirked coldly. Pride? Grace, don't be dramatic. Let me tell you the truth. Since you keep defending him, I'll be honest. I will never marry David. Never. Do you know why I'm with him? It's because he's young, handsome, and very good in bed. That's all. The man my parents want me to marry is old and boring. David is exciting and strong, but marriage? Never. He's my toy boy. Nothing more. Grace froze in shock, her eyes filling with tears. Blessing, this is wickedness. You're playing with a man's heart. A man who truly loves you. Don't you fear tomorrow? What if the poor mechanic you despise today becomes great tomorrow? Will you not regret? But Blessing only laughed coldly. Regret? No, my dear. I know what I'm doing. David should be grateful that a woman like me even gives him attention. Grace shook her head in deep disappointment and walked out, barely able to believe the cruel words her friend had spoken. Meanwhile, Blessing's mother had been listening from the hallway. She entered the room with a wicked smile. My daughter, a mechanic proposed to you? This is the funniest thing I've heard all week. Both mother and daughter burst into loud laughter. Then Mrs. Bankole had a terrible idea. Why don't you invite him here tomorrow? Your father is traveling for business. We'll make him work in the garden, cutting grass and carrying loads. After he finishes, we'll humiliate him properly. That way, he'll never dare to dream above his level again. Blessing clapped her hands excitedly. Mommy, you're too smart. Let me invite him tomorrow. He'll think I've accepted his proposal, but really, it will be the beginning of his shame. The next morning, Blessing called David, her voice sweet and deceptive. David arrived at the Bankole mansion at exactly 2 o'clock, dressed in his cleanest shirt and polished shoes, his heart full of hope. Mrs. Bankole sat regally in the living room. David bowed respectfully. Good afternoon, Ma. I love your daughter and want to spend my life with her. I may not have riches now, but I have dignity, dreams, and a heart full of love. Mrs. Bankole smiled wickedly. If you truly want to marry my daughter, show me you're hard-working. Go work in the garden. Cut the weeds, clear the leaves, and carry those heavy pots. For 2 hours, David labored under the scorching Lagos sun while Blessing and her mother watched like it was entertainment. When he returned inside, exhausted but hopeful, they burst into cruel laughter. Do you think we would ever allow our daughter to marry a mechanic? Mrs. Bankole mocked. Blessing added coldly, You're just a toy to me. Nothing more. David stood tall despite his shattered heart. Thank you. Love cannot survive where there is no respect. He walked out with quiet dignity. Days later, Grace visited David's workshop with food. She had heard about the humiliation from Blessing, who laughed about it. Grace comforted him, and over the following weeks, something beautiful grew between them. Grace finally confessed she had loved him long before Blessing ever did. David proposed and she said yes. But David told her mysteriously, Be ready to meet my parents. When Grace asked who they were, he only smiled. You'll understand soon. The following week, David took Grace to Osso Villa in Abuja. As they passed through heavily guarded gates, Grace trembled with confusion. They entered a grand hall where the president of Nigeria himself sat on a golden chair. David smiled and said, Grace, meet my father, President Adeyemi. Daddy, this is the woman who stood by me when everyone rejected me. Grace gasped, tears streaming down her face. David had been living humbly all along, testing people to find someone who would love him for his character, not his status. 2 days later, the news exploded across Nigeria. The president's son was engaged. When Blessing saw the pictures on her phone, she screamed and collapsed. Her parents rushed to Osso Villa, kneeling at the gates for hours, begging forgiveness. David came out and said firmly, You humiliated me when I had nothing. Now you kneel because you know the truth. I forgive you, but it's too late. I'm marrying Grace. She's the only wife I'll ever have. He instructed the guards to escort them out and arrest them if they returned. The Bankole family drove away in crushing shame. Blessing's life spiraled downward. She returned to seeing a wealthy married man, but his wife exposed their affair publicly. Blessing's name became synonymous with shame. Nobody respected her anymore. She fell into deep depression, crying every night. Meanwhile, preparations for David and Grace's wedding filled the nation with joy. A week later, the entire country watched their grand ceremony on television. Leaders and ordinary citizens celebrated together. In her dark room, Blessing watched on her phone, tears flowing. That was supposed to be me, she whispered. Her younger sister Sarah entered quietly and placed a hand on her shoulder. Blessing, you can still change. Life hasn't ended for you. Pride brought you down, but humility can lift you up again. For the first time, Blessing didn't argue. She looked at the wedding again and whispered, God bless them. They deserve happiness. I've learned my lesson. At the villa, David and Grace danced joyfully as the president raised his hand in blessing. May your union remind the world that love is not about money or class, but about character, respect, and faith. Grace smiled up at David through happy tears. I told you one day your story would change. David smiled back. And I told you I would never forget the one who stood by me when everyone else walked away. Their new life began, built not on wealth, but on truth, loyalty, and love that no amount of money could ever buy. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us keep bringing you more stories. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.